Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. I am here with an industry expert who is the go-to person for restaurants to launch CPG products. This is a topic I am personally fascinated about. I've been so inspired since the last time I spoke with Gail. So, Gail Kurpgeweit, I feel like I mostly got your name right.
Mostly,
Um,
it's good.
did I do it all right? She is the CEO of Pivot North Consulting and the CEO of PNC Specialty Foods. Gail, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I cannot wait to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to talking to you too. Yeah, and it's
Awesome.
Kurpgeweit. Kurpgeweit.
Kurpgeweit.
Yeah, sounds
Got
like
it.
a sneeze. Kurpgeweit.
Love it. Well, the first thing I want to dive into is your career. You have a really interesting business. How you have two brands that work together, from R&D to brokerage to distribution. You are an industry expert, go-to person. Could you give us a little bit of your own career background before we dive into the business?
Well, yeah, so I started in the food industry in around 2009. And it was really, I had come from a management consulting background. The economy was shifting, and that industry was kind of changing. So I went into the food industry in 2009 and started out in catering. And because of my business background, it did grow pretty quickly. We ended up expanding as in this. I started out in Seattle, so we had major corporate accounts for clients. And so that turned into manufacturing. As we started to grow, we started to have Microsoft and Boeing. Those were the first ones who basically wanted some products for their cafes that were, unique to them. They had special parameters that they wanted us to hit, mostly gluten-free, grab and go, stuff like that. So that got me into manufacturing, and from there really expanded into getting products into our own products into grocery stores, QVC, things like that. And just expanding the business in that direction, opening up a manufacturing facility in Montana and still doing catering. And then at one point I moved to Arizona and catering here. So all that was great and fine until COVID hit. And then
Wow.
of course, COVID was, changed everything for everybody in the industry. And I was really looking at the model and saying, how can we really be positioned in a different way? How can we help other people in the hospitality industry? And how can we just do what we've been doing, except do it for other people? And so we had all of the systems in place for product development, distribution, sales, for getting products. What do retailers care about? All those things. And frankly, a lot of those lessons learned the hard way because it wasn't
Right.
all success out of the gate. And so it just really looked at that and said, how can we bring some value? And menu to market kind of came to life. This idea of taking popular restaurant menu items, turning those into CPG products, and getting them into the marketplace. And I see this as a way to help restaurant brands because they can build this parallel revenue stream. So if something like COVID ever happened again, they're not totally reliant on seats in their restaurants. They're not totally reliant on the location of those restaurants. They can have a parallel revenue stream happening where they can meet consumers wherever they are. And so as the economy fluctuates, as things happen in the world, they have
Right.
this revenue stream coming in and building their brand beyond just their local community. They can build a national brand without adding any headcount, any new employees. So that's where it kind of started, this whole menu to market concept. And it was just one of those epiphanies that happened after COVID, and looking at how can we change our business model a little bit so that it's different now. And I didn't want to have to focus so much on catering again. So that's where we are, and it's been really fun and really exciting. Actually, really cool products coming out.
Yeah. I see some of your clients behind you. I know
Yes.
Tacotarian
Mhm.
from my days when I was a creative director and partner of a plant-based restaurant in downtown Las Vegas. And that was one of the things I really wanted to do with the restaurant. I didn't have the opportunity then, but I really see the value even more so now, hindsight 2020, of it's not just about, especially for restaurants, one, it's such a grueling industry. And two, it's not just about more locations to make revenue. It's about creating more experiences. And what I love about CPG and what you're doing is that you're taking a bestseller, something that that brand's really known for, and how do we replicate that, and how do we have manufacturing for the consistency and the scalability of that brand, which I'm just so passionate about. And I that's why I really love what you're doing, because especially for a restaurant, it could make or break a few, a bad season or COVID,
Right.
right? Like it really could. So this to me is a great way also for brands to protect themselves and give themselves a new opportunity outside the walls of a restaurant. So just from my
Exactly.
own personal experience working in the restaurant industry, I really appreciate what you do. It's really
Thank you.
incredible.
Thank you. Well, Tacotarian's a great example of this.
They
So
did great.
they're a young brand. I mean, I think
Right.
what they just celebrated their fifth anniversary or something, and they're a young brand, but they're very ambitious, very innovative thinkers. Obviously, great product, right? They were number one vegan taqueria in the country. They are really strong as a brand, and so that's kind of the first thing that we look for in brands that we think are going to be successful. Excuse me. I always tell people you have to have legs for a national campaign, or we're probably not the right partner for you, right? And so, yes, restaurants could do their own thing, do a local launch with local grocery stores, things like that. But if you really want to scale, you have to think that you're a brand that has legs for national distribution and campaigns, and that starts with how well are they performing in their own local markets. And to uh, Tacotarian excels in all of that. They're successful everywhere they go. So they're really, and their product is phenomenal. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but the first batch of product that was produced and that was brought in, they put it out onto their group for DTC, direct to consumer DTC, and it sold out within 24 hours. We thought
Amazing.
we thought we were going to have a couple weeks worth of product, and it was gone in 24 hours. And we're bringing in the next shipment, and it's already spoken for. So it's going very, very well.
That is a really cool
Yes,
story. I
yes,
love that. Shout out to Tacotarian. I've eaten at
yes.
their restaurant many, many days.
Oh,
And
so
that's
good.
so cool to hear. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what you look for in a brand as far as like what differentiates this brand in the marketplace to know, okay, there's legs, right? That we think that this restaurant could turn into a really viable product in the marketplace nationwide. You said that it has great local recognition. It already has those bestsellers. Is there anything else that you look for, maybe when thinking about the formulation, or if it's shelf stable, or anything else that you could say for a restaurateur or someone maybe thinking about this as an option for them that you're looking for with a
Mhm.
brand?
100% mindset. That's the number one thing I care about if I'm going to work with a client, because it's the mindset that will tell me if they have a brand that can have national legs. Because even restaurants that are maybe modest in the number of locations that they have, for example, our Fancy Freeze product, they have 2 locations in Boise, Idaho. On paper, you wouldn't look at that brand and say, hey, they can be very successful across the country. But what you have is a ownership with a big mindset. They have the mindset for scale. They have the ambition for this. They have a major commitment to exceptionalism in their business and in their products. So when you look at the brand itself and how they perform in their region, we know that's a good indicator of how they're going to perform nationally. And even if their logos and some of their branding isn't maybe is more localized, we can work with them. We have partners that will help with the branding side of it, but they have to be willing for that, and they have to be open to it. And when I'm talking with a restaurant owner, um, and this happens, where they're a bit stubborn, or they really are they're not really open to innovation or ideas on how we're going to do this, I'm not going to be able to help them much, right?
Right.
If they are really set in their ways and they're very small, community minded, that's their lane and that's what they want, then that's what they should do. but I
Right.
but I can't really help them. They're not going to be a great big seller at Costco, right? Like that's not their future if until they're ready to kind of embrace that you do have to look at branding differently. You have to look at being able to take some advice on these things. You have to let people, and my biggest North Star value for these products is always going to be we have to match to the restaurant because that's where they're successful. That's what the consumers want. It's the proven concept. We're not going to change that. We're not going to go and, I mean, we look at their menu to figure out what products are going to fit
Right.
and what makes sense for a launch. But no matter whatever product we end up going with, we're going to match to whatever they're selling at that restaurant. We're going to match to the formula so that consumers will say, oh, wow, it's exactly the same. And that's 100% of the time. Like, we're never going to stray from that because it's so important that we can leverage the brand that they've already been successfully at building.
I really appreciate you calling out mindset because I was honestly expecting you to say something else that, something else that you look at a formula, if it's like shelf stable or, which
So
I'm
we're going
sure
to
it
do all
comes
that.
through it.
Yeah.
But really, the fact that you said the ambition, the vision, what that founder or team has the appetite for, because I find that also in my work too. When I'm working with a founder, usually in the early stages, I also look for that. I don't necessarily always talk about it, so thank you for saying it the way that you did because it really just helped me click in of like, yeah, you have to have that vision first because you could give someone the best CPG product or the best strategy or the best distribution, right? But if they don't have the appetite for it, it's not going to go anywhere, right?
Right.
And so I appreciate you calling that out. That's a really, really important one. So take us behind the scenes of so you have a great founder, they have a great restaurant, they have that bestseller. You get that feeling, that inkling of like, yes,
Mhm.
this founder, this team, they get it. We could definitely do something here. What does that strategy overall, just big picture, look like from, that initial meeting and finding that product they want to turn into a CPG product to us being able to shop it, like you said, in Costco. Just
Mhm.
big strokes of what that could look like.
So we start with what are they known for? Like,
Okay.
Fans Freeze was easy. They were known for their milkshakes, Tacotarian, their uh, taco fillings, and huckleberries. Hey, they're huckleberries, right? But we
Right.
start with what are they known for? What's that brand? How are consumers going to connect? And then our R&D team is going to figure out how to make that a product either frozen or shelf stable. We don't deal with any refrigerated items because its distribution is a
Right.
major pain in the neck and it would be really expensive. So we always look at, okay, how can we turn this into a shelf stable or frozen product? Then from there, then it's the R&D phase. We're getting it packaged. We're all of those things. The other thing that we're looking for, though, besides just what they're known for, is the category performance. So some categories have very low velocity where they just don't move that many units in a week. Soup is a good example of that. Soup's a tough one because you just have very low
Mm,
velocity. And on the other hand, you can look at some of these other categories where the much higher velocity, 20, 30, 40 units a week are average selling off of those shelves in every store. So we look for what kind of category opportunities are there for that product. And that's where we kind of look through Nielsen data and all these other industry data points to give us that feedback. We analyze it, build a roadmap, and say, this is the best way to move forward in the market. Good example is our scones product. So Seven Sister Scones is out of Atlanta, very, very successful cafe with their scones, and they sell DTC all across the country with these delicious scones. They sell them fully baked. They ship them everywhere. Great product. If we would have gone the traditional route, we would have sold that slacked into the in-store bakery. And then so it would ship frozen, the in-store bakery would pull it off the shelf and they would slack it. And then that's where it would sell. And that's where scones currently sell in almost every grocery store in the country right now. So we looked at that and said, okay, the velocity is good. That's a good option. Got down the road a little ways and realized this product doesn't perform as well because we can't get the shelf life that we want. So we reversed back, went back to the R&D phases. Now we're coming out with the very first bake at home scone product that's ever been in grocery. And it's now a frozen product that is going to sell in the frozen breakfast category. We're in production. We've already finished bench. We're going into production in about 2-3 weeks. And this product is phenomenal. And it's like, and the category is really strong, like really strong velocity in frozen breakfast. And it's innovative, which is another thing we're always looking for. How can we be innovative and cool and new? And yet it is an exact match of the formula that the restaurant sells currently.
That is again, another cool story of you went first to the route that you think, okay, this is the obvious low hanging fruit. This is pretty standard. However, I think that also speaks to your R&D, your team, yourself, their team of like, okay, hold on, this isn't meeting the standard of excellence that we want.
Right.
And you actually found something that is even what it sounds like even more innovative and groundbreaking. I can't believe that is the first scone product that's frozen.
Bake it home. Yep. Bake it home. That's
How
completely,
cool is that?
yeah, you bake it completely from, it's the dough puck. So now they'll come out, the consumers can pull them out of the bag, stick them in the oven, have a really delicious fresh baked scone with their morning coffee or tea. And it's amazing. It's a
I'm
delicious
excited to
product.
find this because that sounds amazing, especially if you're hosting brunch and you want something that's just delicious and easy and that you can like pop in the oven. That sounds like such a winner.
Yeah, oh, it is. And we've already had really tremendous feedback from the retailers who are going to carry the product. But that's the process, right? It doesn't always go from point A to point B in a straight line. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get there, but that's where, as a smaller boutique firm, we're able to make those adjustments and say, what's really best for this product? We're not just putting out cookie cutter, everything's the same. Like, oh, it's a CPG, this is your restaurant, this is your menu item, this is going to be your CPG. Every brand has its own kind of story and what's going to be best for them. Fancy Freeze, another good example. We had to completely invent that product because you can't freeze soft serve. It's not freezable. If soft serve lives at 18 to 23 degrees, that's why you always see soft serve machines that keep that churning at a certain rate. Couldn't freeze it. So our R&D teams went to work. We invented, got a patent pending pouch that is sitting behind me on the shelf. And now that soft serve is really creamy and delicious, and it doesn't have any of the problems that you would have if you tried to freeze soft serve. But it's because there's an air barrier system inside of that pouch.
So cool. So with your R&D team and that leg of your business, that's their focus, right? How do we be innovative? How do we create an incredible product, right? And then you also have the brokerage side, right? And helping with distribution and helping them get into retailers. I remember you talking about like the merchandising and just the overall experience. How does then those two businesses work together? What's that handoff like?
So as soon as we have a co-packer, we start, even before production starts, we just have a contractor or a co-packer under contract. We are in pre-sales mode. So like I was saying about the scones, we've already got buyers committing to that product even before we have a product, because we're in pre-sale mode as soon as we know we have a co-packer. So then once the product is produced and in distribution, then we're now fully on the brokerage side. And our brokerage distribution team handles everything from merchandising. So we have in-store boots on the ground, every store that we have, so that we know exactly that our products look great on the shelf and they sell through. And then we have demo teams that are out demoing the products in every location that we're allowed to do that. And in community events where some retailers won't let you do demo events anymore. So in those situations, we do community events, tasting events. And then we're doing marketing strategies around geo-targeted things like that. We want to make sure sell-through is very strong, because getting on the shelf is just step one, right?
Right. Right.
Once you're on the shelf, you've got to
You got to get
sell-through is
off.
absolutely critical. Yes, yes, into that shopping cart. So, so in that side of the business, that's what all it's focused on, is managing distribution, managing production, and sell-through. Our system is meant to be complete, 100% fully managed from point A to point Z, because our clients are restaurant owners. They don't have
Right.
employees who know anything about CPG, most of them, and they don't have time for that. And the whole benefit of using menu to market in PNC is that they don't have to add new people. They just basically say yes, no, and that's it. They write checks. They pay for their products.
Which is an incredible benefit also from the restaurant days of just, working with chefs and running a restaurant. To have the bandwidth to do anything else is really, really challenging,
Right,
especially when you start adding on a possible second, third, 10th location, right?
right.
And so I appreciate how your company is so boutique, and that you really do look at the big picture and able to have the team and the infrastructure that you've tested. I didn't even realize since 2009. So you have this really drilled in and refined. And so I'm sure that also gives your clients a lot of peace of mind. So when they're
I
taking
think it
this
does.
bigger,
Right,
scarier risk, they're like, okay, we're working with someone that really gets it, and I don't have to babysit this.
right. Well, and the point of what we do is to make it so that they can be successful. We've already made the mistakes. I made early mistakes in my first few products, back in the day, and big mistakes that cost me lots of money. So now we can really see around the corners a little bit more, where we can say,
Right.
listen, these are things that are important, little things that people don't think about. Um, Palette configuration, not very sexy, not very cool topic, but it's an absolute game changer when it comes to how profitable your product's going to be. Because that pallet configuration is going to follow you from your freight costs, it's going to follow you at warehousing costs, it's going to follow you in sales, because a lot of retailers will buy truckloads of your product, or at least pallets of your product. So it's one of these little decisions that, if they're not part of this industry, they don't have any experience in it, they're never going to know. And
I'm
it can
literally
be,
writing that one down.
yeah,
Palette. What was it?
configuration. Pallet
Configuration.
configuration. Yeah, you got to know how many boxes are going to fit. You got to be strategic on your master case boxes, because you want to make sure that they're fitting strategically on the pallet, not only to protect your product from overweight, like stacking, but really from how are we going to make sure that this pallet configuration serves our freight costs, serves our sales process. So if we're selling, we want to make sure that we're being very strategic on that side of it. So
Right.
those are just the little things that a lot of people don't think about it until they're like, there's a million little decisions that we have to make every
Right.
single day. And the
Right.
majority of these decisions we make on behalf of our clients, they trust us to make these kinds of decisions. If I tell them, hey, your pallet count is 130, they're going to just trust me that I've done the math,
Right.
and figured this out. And then other times our clients are absolutely, they make decisions. They say yes and no to the deals that we come up with for retailers. They say yes and no to all of the steps along the way, but they don't really have to figure anything out. What happens is I go to them with one or two options and say, which one do you like? And they know that I'm recommending
The
what I'm
best.
recommending at that point.
Right.
And it's because I have experience and I've done it different ways. But the client ultimately has control. This is why I like our model for clients. They have control. It's not going to go on a shelf where they didn't approve it. There's never going to be anything on that label that they didn't say, yes, we like that, it's on brand. We're never going to use ingredients that are not aligned with them. A lot of our clients they want very clean labels, things like that. So they have control over the things that matter to their brand, and yet they can pretty much let us do what we do because we have their best interests in mind. We're monetized. Once we're a broker, we only make money if they make money. So we're in this together,
Right.
and we care about their best interests, and not because we're just angels on earth. It's because we have a vested interest in this. We are successful when they're successful.
Right. It's mutually beneficial.
Mhm.
Mutually
Absolutely.
beneficial. Do you see anything really standing out in the market in CPG that you see as like, okay, this is the vision of CPG products. I really feel like this is where we're heading, or things that you're really excited about creating in the future? I would love to kind of hear your vision of this space.
I think right now our biggest focus is always innovation. What can we do to make this product stand out? So if you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store, it can be just like a sea of sameness, right?
Right.
So I think for new brands, if you're coming to get onto the marketplace with a new product, new something, you want to stand out. How can you do that? And I think it starts with packaging. So we partner with packaging designers that are really, really exceptional in their field, and we partner with the packaging companies. So a good example is we have a new brand, or brand. They're an existing company, very successful brand on the East Coast. We're coming out with a new steak sauce for them. That's based. They're a very premium restaurant. They 6 month waiting list to get into their restaurant. Um, for that product, for example, we're doing a custom bottle. It's a very premium sauce. It's amazing. Going to be very delicious. It'll be a little spendy because it's really, really solid
Right.
product, meant to be premium. Um, and it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. There's nothing else like it on the shelf because we're completely customizing this bottle to match the brand and to stand out. And we're doing that with a lot of our products where we're looking at and seeing. I go to these shelves, literally grocery stores all the time, and I'm looking at the shelves and saying, okay, we're anything that's on that shelf is a no on our list. We will not go to the market in any bottle that looks like that. Like
Right.
we have to stand out. And and if it's in a bottle, then we're going to say, what else is there? Could it be a flexible? Could it be a different way of doing this? What can we do to be different? And and I think that's the number one thing is we want to get attention on the shelf, and we're
Yeah.
never going to compete on price. We're competing against them. I always say we're David's against Goliath because these major food companies that hold, you know, they own most of the grocery store. We can't compete with price. It's never going to happen because
Right.
they're always going to be able to have lower costs on everything. So what we can compete on is innovation and coming up with what is really cool and that consumers are going to love it. And consumers are going to recognize it and say, that's my favorite restaurant. I love that restaurant now. When I'm not in that particular town anymore, I can still enjoy it because I can go down to my local Walmart and buy this product or Albertsons or Safeway or Kroger or whoever.
That was a great point too, and I wrote it down because I'm taking a lot of notes because I know that this episode people are going to get their pen and paper out. Competing on using your competitive advantage of innovation, right? Like that is something that the bigger box brands they do fall short on because they have a system, they have a process to have, innovation in that is going to take a really long time. But an emerging brand or a restaurant turning into CPG or going into CPG, you have that opportunity. So I thought that was a really great point that you made of really your competitive advantage is that you're not like everyone else on the shelf.
Right.
You are different. You've really honed in on what those differentiators are, and now you're going to double down on it to stand
Yep.
out on the shelf. Absolutely appreciate that. Is there any other advice you would share with a founder who or a team who's thinking about going into CPG, from that menu bestseller to marketing on a larger scale? Any last piece of advice you would share there?
I would just say be clear on your vision for it. So if
Mm,
you're feeling like you want to stay this local community brand, then there is a pathway forward that you could build a very successful, modest CPG strategy where you sell locally. I mean, you could get on 3, 400, 500 doors in a local community and be very successful at that. So if that's the vision and that's what you want, then go that direction. And you can do some of that yourself if it's very local. A lot of people have done this where they, build one or two products and then they get, on their local shelves. If your vision is bigger than that, you say, I can imagine that my product is sitting in Costco, or I can see my product on QVC television, or every Safeway in the country, right? If you have a bigger vision and a specific vision, that's where you can get clarity on now what's the path forward to get there.
right.
Because that's going to drive the budget. That's going to drive how much investment is going to be required to get you to where you want to go. But if you're clear on your vision, I can help you get there. And so can other people in this industry, right? Like but
Right.
the owners themselves, it's their vision that matters. They're the ones that have to have a commitment to this. And so, for example, let's say that they've always felt like they want to have franchises. They want to build their brand by scaling with franchises. Well, that's just a great way to build brand recognition in other cities and test the market. Are you selling your sauce, or let's say it's a barbecue sauce, are you selling that in, maybe your restaurants in Florida, but is it selling really well in Illinois, right? Or
Right.
somewhere else in Washington? Now you have a really good track record for expanding your franchise model, because now you can show, hey, we have consumers in this area who love our brand and who are supporting our brand with their grocery dollars. So I think it's just important to say, what's the vision? How does CPG fit into that? And then somebody like myself can help them. We can help bring that vision to life and make it happen. But it's important for the business owners themselves to kind of have a vision of what they want to see for their own brand, because
Right.
that's where it starts. Another option for brands is there are companies who will do like a licensing deal. And they'll say, hey, we're going to just take your brand, we're going to slap it on a product, and you don't have to do anything, and we're going to pay you a royalty. And those deals feel very sweet sometimes to some of these restaurant owners, because they think, oh, that's great, I don't have to do anything, I'm just going to get 3% or 5%. The problem is they lose all control of
Right.
brand alignment. So whatever happens, happens. And they lose all control over their formula. So any kind of ingredient can be put into that product. And if the product is very successful, they lose all of that back end revenue and profit. So some brands choose to do that. They go through a licensing deal, and there are plenty of companies out there who will do it. I don't do that. I don't take my clients down that road, because I don't think it's best for the client in long term.
Right.
It can be really attractive in the short term, because they don't have to come out of pocket with any money. But it is a method to get there. But if your brand, staying on brand and staying very aligned with that story of what you want to do, and the things that are most important to you as a brand, then you want to control it.
Right. Absolutely. And it sounds like in your model, it's working with the brand themselves to say, okay, how can we take the through lines of what makes us so unique and have that consistency versus
Yes.
not
And
having that
right.
as an option.
And they control it. That's
Right.
they do not lose any part of that control. Even with us as their broker, like, we have a period of time that if we're not performing, we lose that business. Like, it's never happened, but we technically, if we're not performing, then they can go take it somewhere else. They still own that product. They can do whatever they want with it. Um,
Right.
so those are the things I would just say. If for a brand it's really considering this, think about what's the big vision. Then we can roadmap it and tell them this is the best path to get there. But they got to start. I want to start imagining a little bit. What does that look like for them?
Right.
Where do they see their product going? Where do they, even if they don't know what product it is, where do they see their brand going?
Where do
Because
they see their brand
every
going?
client I have, I don't think anybody yet, maybe one, knew what their product was going to be before we started.
Well, and that also speaks to mindset and vision, right? You don't have to have all the pieces together, but as long
Right.
as you have that vision and that clarity around what you want to build and you're open
Mm-hmm.
to working with experts to bring you options, I
Right.
think that I also see that in my own work as a brand strategist. The founders who say, "Okay, what this is what I wanna do. How would you get me going?" Right? How do you
Mm-hmm.
get me in those early days, create the stage, and then bring in the people to help execute? The ones that trust me on that part
Right.
really take off. The ones that are like double down on, well, it has to be this exact way, or I wanna do it myself, or,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Those are the ones that really have taken the longest to see the results
Right.
because they're not necessarily trusting the process. So
Exactly.
I love how you've kind of like built that in to
Mm-hmm.
your model, which is great.
Right.
And yeah, I'm obsessed with everything you shared today. So,
Well, thank you.
and I know so many people listening are too. So, how does someone work with you? What does that first step or first initial steps look like?
So first step is, they can visit our website, pivotnorthconsulting.com. And on there at the bottom of the page, they'll see like a link for restaurant owners. There's a particular page for restaurant owners, and then there's a link to where they can watch a webinar that kind of gives them more details about it. And there's also links all over to get, book time on my calendar. Usually we like to see them go through that process first before they
Right.
link to my calendar, because we
Right.
want to make sure they really understand what we're doing. But that's generally the first step, or they connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a DM, and then we just talk through it. So it always usually starts with that conversation of, let's just talk through quick questions. What's even, big picture here? What are they looking to do? If we're going to move forward, the first step in our process is called a phase one analysis, where we deep dive into the category. We look at their menu, we look at their brand, we look at, we pull Nielsen data for their categories. Sometimes there's 3-4 categories that they might be considering. That takes us 4 to 6 weeks to do a phase one analysis. It's a huge deep dive into the data, and also it's a roadmap. It becomes the foundation for their launch. And sometimes it ends there. Sometimes we get to the end of a phase one and we feel like this is not something that we're going to want to take to market. If we do take it to market, then we'll make them an offer for that and say, listen, we can go forward. Then we go to phase two, which is getting R&D done, finding them a co-packer, setting up distribution, and then eventually it goes to brokerage. But other times they take that phase one and they just do it themselves, or they, kind of start out on a smaller scale, or they don't. Sometimes it's not there's a reason why we don't recommend it.
Right.
There are
Right.
sometimes that it's not a good fit. I
Well,
have a great product that is an absolutely fantastic product, but because of the kind of the positioning of that particular product, it's such a noisy category. Their food costs would be out of this world. Like, there's not really a good way to bring that very specific product to market, and they aren't open to any other products. And so I'm like, well, then we can't really help you. And so
right.
sometimes that happens, that I just have to say, this is not a good fit.
And again, I think that speaks to your expertise of you're honest and you will only walk down the path with people that you think that it's a viable path with.
Right.
Right, and I appreciate that because there's so many people out there in the world that would just take anything and be like, "Oh, yeah, we can figure this out," and, these people are out a lot of money and frustration and right? And
Right.
so I think that also speaks to your, experience and expertise that you're very honest in that, pursuit of finding a viable product.
Right.
So, thank you for sharing that because I think that just also speaks to the trust people have in you of like when you say it's a no, you really mean it.
Yeah.
And you only really take on stuff that you think that would be successful.
Right.
Um, Gail, I could talk to you for hours. You're
Oh, thank
seriously
you.
so cool and so interesting, and I appreciate everything that you do. Especially again, I've had so many aha moments from my restaurant days, talking with you today. So thank you again for sharing. Thank you
Yep.
everyone for listening. I will put all the notes that I took personally in the show notes, the links to your website, how to book a call, and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing for restaurants, for CPG brands. I really appreciate it. And
Awesome.
thank you again for coming on today.
Well, thank you. It's been really fun.
That was great. See you
All right.
everyone next week on Emerging Brands Podcast.